Hello, everybody.
Hello.
How are we doing? Fantastic. So while we sort the IT things out, there's a wonderful story that's told by a kindergarten teacher. And she talks about the fact that whenever she gets a new class of young kids around the ages of 4, 5, they come into her class and she asks them a question every time. And she says to them, who here is creative? And she says every single one of them puts their hand up like reaching for the sky, sometimes 2 hands up. Every single one in the class. And so she talks about the fact that as the years go on, she asks that same question as they get older. And the interesting thing is that fewer and fewer hands begin to grow up. And it's an interesting thing for me because it feels as if we live in a world that is actively teaching us that your natural instinct, which is to say that you are creative, which is to know that you are creative, you know it before you can do most things, but that is something that is educated out of you. And so for me, to be here today is actually very, very special because I would like to share with you not any fundamental story, but my story, just like each of us have a story. And I like to call my creative journey one that is unlikely, and hopefully you'll see why as I take you through some of the milestones and how I got to be here. But it's literally one of those where I was like, what on earth am I doing? Why am I doing this? Yeah. I could be an engineer. I could be, actually I couldn't. I could be a lawyer. I could be a doctor. I could do all these things that would guarantee my family's success. And yet I chose this journey. And the interesting thing for me is that it's not only a journey that led to creativity, but it's a journey once I allowed myself was creative in itself. So is the IT system up? Are we good? Oh, we'll just look at this side. It's okay. Fantastic. So I think in order to tell you my story, as you can see, there's my name. I think I got the date right for today. We had to submit this a week ago, by the way. So I made a lot of predictions and assumptions about what today would be like. Okay, is it moving? Can I get it to move? Okay, no, it's moving now. Cool. So I thought a good place to start is probably the beginning. And for me, the beginning starts here. Who can guess where that is? Who said it? Who said it? No, hang on. You're not allowed to speak. She's worked for us. It's Lalin. Okay, that's great. That's great. So is your home language Xhosa? Yes. Okay. This is not what a Lali looks like. This is a Lokshin. There? Tanzania. What? So okay, there we go. It's a bit Healy, but just not as Healy as the KZN ones, right? Yeah. So this is Tanzania. I was born in Port Elizabeth, and when I was 1, we moved to this location. This is where I still live. My parents are still here. So this is where my journey started, and I am one of 7. I'm the last one of 7. And the interesting thing is, 1 girl only. The rest are brothers. Luckily for her, she's the oldest. So nobody got to vet the boyfriends, no nothing. We can tell her nothing. Now that my mom's passed on, we call her deputy mother. So it's literally one of those. But literally, I was the last born out of 7, born and grew up in this township. And the interesting thing about my story is that when I was 9, my parents decided that they wanted me to learn English. But this was before 94. So in order for me to learn English, they needed to send me away to Cape Town. So they sent me to go and live with my cousins for 2 years. I went to live with my cousins for 2 years so that I could learn to speak English. And when you grow up in this town and all you see are people that look like you, you are convinced that anybody who speaks, when you finally get to Cape Town, anybody who speaks English is therefore white. So there I was, I went to the school, and I'll never forget my dad came to see me in my first holiday. And we started conversing, and I said to him, so my dad now that I've sort of got my head around this English thing, my dad asked me, so how's school? So I responded, yeah, school's going very well, Daddy. Then he says to me, okay, and how's the teachers? No, the teachers are right, man. And I noticed that, and then I'm like, why do you speak like that? I had no clue that I was actually going to a colored school. And it was the best time of my life. I went to a school called Good Hope. I went to a school called Surrey Primary in Athlone. And then, when the government decided that white schools are opening up for blacks, the test for a school called Selborne College in East London, the test was a book called 101 Dalmatian. And we had done it there by my school. And so I went down, I flew down, my first flight ever, I flew down and had the interview, and I started going to Selborne. So I was very, very lucky to be one of the first cohorts of black people to go to Selborne. Interesting experience. There's a girl who was part of that cohort who actually did some research to see if the teachers had any training whatsoever before diverse kids were let into their class. And what do you think the answer to that is? No. Exactly. Why do you think so many of us are so damaged nowadays? Because you literally went into being taught by people that never ever perceived that they'd ever teach you. So those other periphery things that they would actually instill in you are things that took so many years to actually unlearn, because they were based on their own prejudices and their own biases. But that essentially happened. So I went to Selborne, had a wonderful schooling career. And then the interesting thing about this is at the time, there is somebody who was a big influence in my life. I didn't realize it so much as it was happening, but now when I look back, I realize it. And that person is this person. This is my dad. This is my old man. So my dad was a rep. My dad sold cigarettes. He was a rep for a company called United Tobacco Company. Later became BAT, etc. But my dad used to sell cigarettes. Never smoked a day in his life. And I would watch my dad convincing people, and also the cigarettes that they used to sell were the more higher end. So Benson and Hedges, John Player Smooth Special, versus Stuyvesant, Rothmans, Lexington. So I would watch my dad have to convince all these people, watch him do promotions, watch him sell to people. And I was fascinated by this. And my dad's, every part of my personality, if you think there's a bit of bubbly here, trust me, that's the source of the bubbly. So well known around the community, all kinds of tips and tricks. He could go into a room at a tavern or whatever the case may be, find the guy that everybody seems to be looking at, get that guy to have a try of the Benson and Hedges, make sure he puts it on the table, so that the people that are looking at that table start to say, what is that? Influencer, first freaking influencer. So it's that kind of thing. So here I was, every weekend I'd go home. Oh, by the way, here's an interesting fact. I haven't lived at home since I was 9 years old. Remember I said I moved to Cape Town at 9 years old? When I came back and I was accepted into the school, my dad decided that there is no way that we are going to be paying this kind of money for you to be in the school, and then you come home to the lokshin, and there's any risk that you may fail. So I am going to make sure that you stay there. So not only did I have the trauma of my wonderful teachers at school, I also had the trauma of my hostel masters. But essentially, I haven't lived at home since I was 9 years old. And the interesting thing is I'd come home on weekends, and then while I was at home, I'd be there with my dad. I'd be watching him doing his promotions and everything else. And this really started to create a sort of passion in me around just this understanding. How do you convince people? How do you get them to do stuff? Like, how do you do this? And so I go through my schooling career, and then I get to matric. There I am, by the way, super popular in high school. That's the nice thing, because we're all there. Nobody has to go and see them danzane, because when I go home to the hostel. You know, so I'm there, I'm living my best life. And I was, honestly, I was like, man, this is it. This is incredible. I've got this whole thing. I'm doing well at school. By the way, interesting thing is, because I went to the school that I went to, they offered art as a subject. So I started doing art. I was involved in drama. I was involved in the choir. Music is my number one passion. Get it from my mom. And so there I was. I'm freaking so excited about the future. And then what happens is I get to matric. And when I get to matric, my dad and my mother sit me down and they say, so, what are we going to do now? I'm like, what do we mean? UCT, baby, are you freaking kidding me? Wits, baby, are you kidding me? And they say, no, because your reality is slightly different to the others. You don't live in the hostel, you live here. And essentially my parents tell me that, well, we're going to spend the next 5 years paying off the last 5 years. So unfortunately, you can't go and be with your friends where they are going. So you need to find something here local, you know. This thing that you are doing, isn't there like a sign writer or something? and so huge disappointment. And I'll never forget, man, I was so bleak. And you guys know how this works, right? Like the way we all operate as a group, you know, like when one person has to leave the group, mind you, a very vocal person, a bubbly person, I was an important part of the group. And now suddenly I'm the person who's there on some. And I actually sat at home and I was so down and I was so disappointed. And now here's where it actually gets quite interesting for me, because my brother called me. One of my brothers called me. My brother at the time was at a technicon. And he was at a black technicon. You remember back in the day, you had technicons, but we had our technicons. My brother was at a technicon back then called Pentech. My brother calls me and he says, chap, what's your plan? And I say to him, well, I don't know, in my posh accent. So I said to him, well, I don't know, you know, mom and dad said I can't go. And I'll never forget, and this is just keep this theme of unlikely in the story. So my brother then said to me, look, to be honest with you, you've got to understand one thing about life. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You may be saying goodbye to your friends right now. You'll see them later on in the race. Here's what I can tell you. You don't have the luxury of taking a gap year. So my suggestion to you, I had somehow found out that, because what I wanted to do is that I knew that I wanted to do something to do with art in the creative space. But I also knew that I couldn't become a painter at that time, because I'd never seen that being a commercially viable career, which I'll speak to a bit later around what you're exposed to forms what you, at the very least, can aspire to. So I'd never seen it. So I knew that I wanted to be somewhat in a space that allowed me to commercialize my passion for creativity and for art. And the one thing that I'd found as an avenue to do that was graphic design. So that's what I spent my time looking around East London to see, is there any place where I can try and pursue graphic design? And it was around this time that my brother calls me, he gives me this whole speech, and he says, you cannot afford to take a gap year, so here's my offer to you. I'm on the SRC here. And somewhere there on that curriculum, what there, that prospectus thing, I saw this graphic design thing that you are talking about. And I'm saying, forget everything else. Selborne is in the past now. You, in the morning, wake up, go to highway, which is our bara, get onto a bus, make your way here, and let's find a way of getting you in. I say to him, but I didn't apply. He says, no, I told you I'm on the SRC. I woke up the next morning, I took my portfolio of my paintings and everything that I'd done, I took my matric certificate, I did the whole thing, and I got onto a bus and made my way to Cape Town. I'll never forget, and this is the kind of indoctrination that happens, right? Remember, I've been going to white school since I was in grade 5. Standard 3. I had to work that out very quickly. So I've been going to white school since standard 3. So in my head, as I'm going, guys, as I got closer to Cape Town, the picture I had in my head, the messy campus, the broken windows, because it's black, it must be that. You know, these are the perception that I've got in my head. I'm like, oh my God, me, the Selbornian. I drove into that campus, and you have no idea what I was confronted with. Some of the most beautiful, spread out lawns, amazing people, not a single broken window, not anything. I walked in, my brother got to introduce me. Now, you must also remember, and once again, this speaks to exposure. Suddenly, my brother's introducing me to Oscar Mangope. This guy is speaking a different language. I'm getting introduced to Refilwe. I'm getting introduced to all types of different people from Ubeki. I'm like, hey, my Xhosa is relegated here. And these are his friends. This is his community. And then we somehow get in. My brother makes up a thing around my application that got lost in the mail. Eventually, they let me in. I failed the test. I did the whole thing. You had to do a test. I failed the test. And then my brother's political side came out. And my faculty fell under engineering. And the dean of engineering, which my brother spoke to, didn't want any politics entering the department. He said, okay, fine, let him in. So I got in. And the interesting thing about this is, guys, it was such an incredible time in my life, probably the best time of my life up until that point. Because to see somebody who's never stepped into a white anything, to socialize with those people, a person comes from the poorest parts of South Africa, is an engineering student, scores 98% better than UCT students coming from Kwakwa. So all these perceptions that I had around what's black is bad, what's black is inferior, suddenly I started to see my white colleagues in a different place, because I'm like, this guy is doing this coming from this, versus Matthew, who comes from a legacy of Matthew's dad was this method. This is a guy who's changing the trajectory of his family based on nothing else but sheer will and belief. So it was the most incredible time in my life. And then I finished and I had my qualification. Oh, there's a beautiful part to the story, right? Remember, it goes up and it goes down. So get in. I freaking hate this place, what it's going to be like. But it turns out to be one of the best places ever for me, because it changes how I perceive my own people. Now, the interesting part about this story, remember I said goodbye to my friends there that were going to the UCTs and everything else? You know what was even more expensive than the UCTs and everything else? Is the advertising schools. So I've said goodbye to my UCTs, and I've said even a further goodbye to those ones that are going to advertising schools. Do you know around this time what is happening elsewhere in the world? Steve Jobs is returning to Apple. Apple is a part of a program by George W. Bush, which is called USAID. And a part of this is that they've spoken to different corporates around the US to say, let's help different parts of the world. It's the soft power that America is now losing. And so as part of that, Apple, when he goes into Apple, he creates the first new Macs. Remember those colorful new Macs? What launched the Mac as we know it now? They launched these new Macs. It was the fastest selling computer in the world. They were selling one every 6 seconds. And so they decide, what's the poorest place in South Africa that we can donate these machines to? And therefore, my studying, unlike my AAA and my Vega friends, I study on the latest Macs donated by Steve Jobs himself. Right? Beautiful. I remember my friends from UCT and my friends from AAA would come and I'd say, come and see me on Wednesday. You can come and see my computer. But now I finish, I do my honors, I finish, life is all good. But there's even more disappointment. Now I cannot get a freaking job. End up working for a call center. Guys, I thought this call center thing was going to happen for a few months. Ne? Hey, a year later, I'm still there. Getting my weekly payments, 800 Rand a week. Look, on campus, I was freaking cruising. Magnums all the time. I was liquid. Going from 400 Rand a month from my parents to 800 Rand a week. But I couldn't get a job in advertising. And it actually became it was depressing. I used to get up at 5 a.m. every morning, get onto a train from Belleville, make my way to town, then get a taxi to Searle Street, then have to, in fact, before getting to Searle Street, walk through Gympie Street, get robbed, and then make my way, and eventually I'd be at the call center. I did this for close to 2 years. Couldn't get a job in advertising. I used to be so depressed, actually. I used to have a thing where I used to kick a can when I was walking home. I used to work on Saturdays, walking home. And I used to just think, man, what a failure you are. Out of the 7, you are the one that was invested in. You are the one that can kumsha. But this is you. Hello, Mrs. I just want to know, do you want to redeem your points? I was working for New Clicks Holdings. Terrible, terrible time. And then, I love this thing. It reminds me of me when I'd kick that can walking down. And then one day, the most beautiful thing happened. I got a call, and the biggest agency in South Africa at the time, the biggest agency in South Africa was looking for a copywriter. Now, to give you context, where I'm working at this time is the worst part of town. I told you I used to have to walk through Gympie Street, and our offices were in Woodstock. Not the Woodstock that you know of today, Akona. Not the Woodstock of today, the Woodstock of yesteryear, like back then. I used to work in Woodstock. This phone call that comes through, this office, is in Camps Bay, overlooking the ocean, what, the whole freaking thing. Guys, I went to this freaking interview. Now, remember the trajectory of the story, right? Unlikely. I get into this interview. I had an interview with the MD. He looks through the stuff, and then he says, I actually like your work. And then he says, but I'm a bit confused. We're looking for a copywriter. And here it says that you're a graphic designer. And then I say to him, well, that's the funny thing. Where I studied, you couldn't have a copywriter and a designer or an art director working together, which is the traditional way that you do it. So you had to do everything yourself. So everything that you say you've liked about my work, I did both the design and each concept and the writing on it. So the disadvantage that I had in this interview ended up being my advantage. And I'll never forget, he took off his glasses and he said, if I hire you, do you promise me that I will not regret that I didn't hire someone with this official qualification that I wanted? And I remember thinking to myself, firstly, I will never wear glasses. And then secondly, I said to him, if you hire me, I will be the hardest working person in this office. And he said to me, 2 years after working at the call center, he said to me, you can start on Monday. You know that scene in The Pursuit of Happiness, ne? At the end, ne? You know there, when you're there in the that was me. Literally walking down, tears streaming down my face, so happy to have landed this first gig. It was absolutely incredible. And then, guys, what follows is one of the craziest stories. I mean, I went at FCB, you could reject something of mine. Mind you, talk about writing scripts. How many scripts do you think I'd written? Do you think that mattered? I believed that I could do, there was nothing that I'd look at. And now you must remember, I know John. Look, it's been a while since I was with John, but I know John. So I look at my freaking colleagues, I'm like, no guys, I'm the one with, I know this thing. And at the time we were working on, our biggest client was a retail client, ShopRite. Guys, I'm like, you can't tell me about ShopRite. My mother used to be a cashier there. I know and I knew that I knew it better than Matthew, I knew it better than, I was there. You reject my script, I write you 20 more. It's fine. I've got nothing better to do. I was that kind of a person. I was there. Guys, I would go home. Ne? We've got a brief here. The brief says it's ShopRite's 20th birthday. Guys, I get home. I've got 4 of my friends sitting here. I say, Chana, I've got this idea. We're going to create a jingle for them. And my friends are unemployed, so they've got no choice there. Guys, here we are. We're creating the whole thing. What? Next day, I say to my friends, gents, here's money, please. Can you meet me at the office? My friends are there. White people have never seen anything like this. My friends are there. Next thing, we are in Brackenfell in a freaking mammoth office presenting to Whitey Besson. Whitey Besson, fuck Philip. I fucking love these oaks, Philip. Philip, this oak, I want him to go to take this to all my stores. That was my reality. And before I knew it, I got the biggest freaking prize that you could get at FCB within 6 months of me being there. I was promoted to becoming a deputy creative director, in fact a senior writer within my first 2 years. I was promoted to becoming a deputy creative director within about 3 years. And within my fourth or fifth year, I got a call from a company in Johannesburg. And that company was Joe Public. Joe Public was owned by FCB. Remember, I'm at FCB, biggest agency in the country. They're so big that they own other agencies, smaller agencies. They own Joe Public. Joe Public gave me a call in 2006 and said, yo, we've heard about you and we need you to move to Joburg and come and work for us. Didn't know anybody else in Joburg. One of my brothers was here. I was skeptical. How do you move from the biggest agency to an agency that's smaller that they own? Needless to say, I trusted the process, moved to Johannesburg in 2006. Within 4 months of me being there, Joe Public loses their biggest client, CTM, made up about 80% of the company. Within 3 or 4 months of me moving to Joburg, we lose a client which makes up about 80% of our revenue. We have to get rid of about 80% of our staff. Trust me, I'm like, what kind of decision did I make? Now, the interesting thing is that sometimes it takes a breakdown to get a breakthrough. Because when this happened with the founders, the one question that they asked themselves is, has belonging to these guys served our company? Because the one thing, if you work in the creative space, the one thing is your product is creativity. You have a firm belief that your creativity can add and make a difference to a business. It is a business solution. And the one thing that we were about, we had lost, because everything was about how much money are you giving to the company that owns you. How much money are you giving to the Americans? So having lost this big account, actually, breakdown became a breakthrough, because they said, why do we exist? We are called Joe Public. If you look at any advertising agency within my industry, it's named after the people that founded it. Ogilvy and Mather, FCB, Foot Cone and Belding. You could name the Y&R, Youngin and Rugby etc. It's like law firms, it's like audit firms. You know, this is an ego game. And yet this company was called Joe Public, because it was a company for people, by people. It was a company for the man on the street. So they decided, how can we be a company for people, by people, if we're owned by Americans? And so they said, yes, we've lost our biggest client, but it also means that our company is worth nothing. So let's do something that's never been done, and let's go to our owners and say we'd like to buy the business back. This was in 2008. The guys decided to go and buy their business back. The guy said, you're crazy. You won't find a bank that will back this. And they said, we'd at least like to try. They went to the first bank said no. The second bank said, you're crazy. The third bank said, no. The fourth bank said, okay, we'll take a chance on you. And so they got the business back in the middle of the recession in 2008. They then identified a few key staff. I was one of them, myself and a lady that I started with, Kutala. They came to us and they said, listen, we would like you to be a part of the new journey of this company, and we'd like to offer you equity in this company. Although it's not worth anything right now, but we believe that we can build something together. I decided, what else have I got to lose? I believed in the company, I had faith in the company, and I decided the trajectory of my journey is that I go with what I believe in, so let's do it. So both myself and Kutz agreed, and we restarted the company in 2009, around there. The interesting part of the story is that that bank that had faith in us today is our biggest client, Nedbank. The CEO that we negotiated with, who told us we were crazy to try and do this because it had never been done before, ended up leaving that agency and becoming a part of us as our chairman. He's actually retiring. He's just retired in the last month from us. And it literally became a story where we started this company essentially around 2010 to today being the biggest independent agency in the country. And we've been so fortunate. We're a company of around 280 people with offices in Johannesburg, in Cape Town, in Durban, in Amsterdam, in Antwerp, in London recently. So reversing the entire network agency to say, we don't want Americans or anybody from outside to come and buy us. What if we dared to create something that went out into the world? And we get to have so much fun. I mean, as I said to you, these are the guys, this is the company. There's our little Joe man on top, working with some of the most incredible thing. I think you might find a corner there somewhere. But just working with such a diverse group of people, working with such a diverse and brilliant group of people, and we get to create cool stuff like this. Huh? I'm just so fascinated. So we've been working with this brand now for the last couple of years. We've been so fortunate to tell such amazing South African stories. We work with everything from this type of sector, the FMCG space. We've got the banks, as I mentioned to you. We've got Nedbank that we work with. We've got Santam that we work with. We work with Brutal Fruit. We work with Flying Fish. Beautiful story about Flying Fish and Brutal Fruit. You know, when we started working with SAB, the three super brands were Carling Black Label, Castle Lager, and Castle Light. Today, the three super brands of SAB are Carling Black Label, Brutal Fruit, and Flying Fish. Incredible story of brands that are started here that are now being launched globally. So it's just been one of those incredible times. We are ranked the number one agency in South Africa, in the Middle East, probably for the last 7 years, unheard of. And for 2 of those years, we were number 2. And then we're the number 1 independent agency in the region, 18th most creative agency in the world. And myself and one of my business partners are ranked as the number 1 duo in Africa and the Middle East. But I think for me, guys, hopefully in such a short time, I've given you a bit of a sense of a journey that I think is as unlikely as it has been creative. But I just wanted to leave you with just 6 little lessons that I've learned in terms of my journey. The first one is, don't let your creativity go. I don't know if you guys can see. I was in London at 3 in the morning because Nozi was hounding me to say, where is your presentation? Where is your presentation? And there is an error here on this slide, which I couldn't change. Uncertainty and fear are part of the process, but should never cripple you to the point of lack of enactment, right? So I think here, the one thing that I really want you to know, and I want you to encourage, and I want to encourage you, is that to be fearful and to be uncertain is something that you should embrace. There is so much that I've shared with you today around where I had no freaking idea how this whole thing is going to turn out. I remember even when we started with our agency, when we got our agency back in 2010, we had to start from scratch. We had no idea how it's going to go, but we spent that time creating the groundwork. We created systems. We said, what do we want to be our company's mantra? What do we want to stand for? We want to stand for the growth of people. We want to stand for the growth of our, because if we've got the growth of people, it becomes the growth of our clients, which ultimately means the success of us as a business, which means that we can grow our country. So growth of people, which becomes the growth of clients, which becomes the growth of country. That's our purpose. Well, we found our purpose. So there's so much groundwork that happened that nobody freaking knows about, but everybody sees it now. And everybody says they call this luck because they don't see this, right? That's exactly what happens. The second one is that growth happens at your edges. Okay, this is so very important. Exposure is key to expanding your horizons and taking you out of your comfort zone. Embrace it. Guys, this is the one thing I spoke to you guys earlier on, and I said, what you don't know, you can never aspire to. And the one thing that I find interesting about today's generation is that you guys have got more exposure than any generation before you. The fact that you can have me, you can have Z speaking here before me, everything is in front of you. And more than that, you've got it at your fingertips. Find out, don't be settled with what you know. Find out the things that you don't know. You know, and be so mindful about the idea of creating your own jurisdiction. I'll never forget, I think the year was 2015. I was walking in New York, and something clicked inside of me, and it said, whoever told you that your jurisdiction is South Africa? just that unlocking of my mind found me in a situation where from 2016 until 2022 I ended up on a board in New York. Just by unlocking my mind to the fact that who says you are confined to just being here? Your exposure doesn't say that. So you have to make sure at all times that once it feels too comfortable, maybe I should be exploring more. This is so dear to me. We are often told that seeing is believing. In my organization, we believe that believing is seeing. If you had told me that we would be the #1 agency in South Africa for 7 years, I would have said, you're freaking joking. But what I've learned is that you have to visualize it. It doesn't matter how. Don't worry about the how. But imagine saying something so crazy and so audacious. Just setting that as a vision for yourself. And then everything, the universe shifts and everything comes around you to actually make that happen. Maktub, it really, really does happen. And then the fourth one is that the greatest creative act you can do is to start. And it links very much to that point that I made before. It will always be easier to come up with excuses than to swing into action. No, I don't come from this kind of family. No, I don't have, I don't speak that language. It's always easier. But the hardest thing, as a creative, we always say the hardest thing is a blank page. That's why my job is so easy, because I have to fix other people's errors. But I respect every creative so much because I know that the scariest thing is when you've got a blank page. So you have to start. And the first step is never just a first step. You see? There's always these invisible steps that actually gives momentum to. Number 5, this is so important, and I'm saying this to young people all the time. Experience means nothing until you have it. There is a tendency that we have in South Africa where young people are so convinced that they know it all. The young people are so convinced, they're like, why did you guys take so long? But honestly, respect those who have walked the path before you, learn from them, look to them when you need support. That last sentence is so important. I've spoken to so many contemporaries of mine, I've spoken to so many people that have done incredible things, and they always say, the funniest thing is, there's nothing that I enjoy more than when a young person asks me. But the problem is they never do. So honestly, use that as a resource. And then the last one for me is you must have fun on your journey. This is the one thing. Like, life is as long as it is short. Your road is uniquely yours. If you found any level of uniqueness in my story, trust me, yours is just as unique. And so you may as well make it memorable. If we're not having fun, then what the heck are we doing here? Because none of us get out of it alive. So with those few words, thank you so much for having me to be with you this morning. It's been amazing.
Very limited time for questions. Can I just have maybe 3 hands and then, wow, okay, that is a lot. Okay, I'll take 2 from this side and 2 from here. And then from there, he will answer after you say all the questions, yeah? Okay. Please introduce yourself as well.
I hope I can articulate myself.
Sure.
And as you were speaking, I had just come up with a code which kind of translates my frustration, as a creative. I'm a creative strategist by profession.
Sure.
And I realized that the currency of creativity is accepted by those who perceive it as valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And I've realized that the biggest barrier as a creative is how it is disrespected in driving transformative change.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know where to go. It's really, really frustrating. And this year is brilliant as you,
Mm-hmm.
There's no one we can really go to seek these,
Cool. Got it?
Thank you. I'm Jebo. So I currently work in market research, and I try to inject some creativity in the work that we do in telling the stories of what consumers are saying and how they're experiencing the different brands that we work with. And so my question is, something that I struggle with is, how do you separate yourself from the creativity that you inject in your work, especially when it's getting criticized?
Mm-hmm.
Hi. Hi everyone.
Yes.
Hi Xolisa.
Yes.
My name is Dyeshana and I'm a marketing coordinator at the ACA.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my question is, when you face, in the creative space, you face a lot of rejection,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you come in with high hopes as a young child or a young creator,
Mm-hmm.
and you face this rejection. How do you come back from it? You know,
Okay.
you had a really great journey of resilience. So
Cool. Can I answer those three? Otherwise, let's start with those. Okay. There you are, brother. Okay. So, just on that first one, I think for me, something that I completely agree with you, and I always feel like creativity wins the battle almost naturally. You know, yesterday we went to present to a client. It's a potential client. And the only thing we said to them is, people are exposed to 20,000 messages by the time we get to midday. What is it that's going to make them notice yours? Whatever industry you're in, there's thousands of you. So our only offer to you as a client is that we can use creativity to be the element of surprise, to take people, because here's something that we all don't realize. Everybody is in autopilot. Think about yourself. Think about how you get ready. Think about how you got here. Probably the one part that took you out of your autopilot is coming to Henley, because we're not here every day. But every single part about what you did before, what you're doing after, if you go past the grocery store, it's the grocery store you go to. It's going to pick up the products that you notice. So the only thing that we can do is to use creativity, the element of surprise, to present something to you in a way that you didn't think about it before. And usually, and this is the beauty about creativity, it's actually familiar. But you know when you're like, fuck, how did they think of that? Because that's so true. That's the beauty of insights. So my encouragement to you, my brother, is you mentioned also at the end something that I mentioned here. For me, when you get through those kind of blocks, I'm somebody that's been in the industry. Reach out, because I listened to you speaking about being almost at this place where you don't know what to do. But it's exactly that. Experience means nothing unless and until you have it. So if you are in those spaces, reach out to people that are in that space and say, how do you sort of get through this? Which is why I loved your question, by the way. Njebo, my brother, to me, it's an interesting one. Just remind me where we were again. Your exact.
So it was, how do I remove myself?
That's it. Got it. You don't. And I love how all three questions are somewhat related as well. You don't remove yourself, because that's what makes you good. But I'll never forget, I did something towards when I first got to Joburg. I generally believe in operating from an open hand. We all like to protect stuff. But I believe the universe rewards you when you open stuff, open source. So I remember when I got to Joe Public, one of the things that I did is I invited the creative director of an opposing agency of our competitor. And I said, come and talk to us as creatives and tell us how you do it. And he did that. And one of the things that he gave me, which I'll never forget, is don't be afraid that you will run out of ideas. Know that where that one came from, more will come. That's why I gave you that. You see that little young guy that started at FCB that said, if you reject my idea, I'll give you 10 more? I'm that person now, all these years later. And I find that with so many young people, we want to hold on to an idea. Brother, you are ideas. And you will only get to them if you allow yourself, okay, that's cool. I read something so beautiful. It says, take a no, don't take a no as a no. take a no as a request for more information. So that's my thing. So don't separate yourself from it, because unfortunately it's creativity. It has to come from within, and I'm hoping that I've sort of covered both of these in the same place. Don't be afraid of rejection. Don't be afraid of people saying no, and bring yourself to the freaking thing. One of my favorite sayings is, if you believe that there is a God, and if you believe that you are made in His image, and He is the creator of all things, imagine your power to create. It's infinite. Reject this one. Dude, I'll come up with 30 more. I promise you I will. And so will anybody else here. But you just have to believe that about yourself.
Okay. Last question.
Yep.
Last one.
Guys, I've done so well in helping you make up your time. I've been watching.
Please forgive me for not being able to stand.
That's fine.
My name is Linda Rajamini.
Yes.
And you started this whole chat with the fact that, who is a creator?
Yes.
And I would pick up my hand even today,
Yeah.
even though I'm an engineer, right?
Yeah.
And I really believe creatives are our dreamers, and creatives are our direction as a country, as a continent. And I'm not really sure if it's a comment or a question.
Yeah.
I'd just like your input into it,
Yeah.
in terms of how do we then merge this collective cooperation between the sciences and with creatives. And I say this because I always think of Isaac Asimov in the 40s coming up with the laws of robotics, and now in industry there's something real, saying that creatives are the ones that are going to paint our future for Africa, right? And this is the opportunity, though, for us to get into those spaces, to get into spaces together, and sort of chart the future. Creatives, they dream everything. They show us what we're capable of.
Yeah.
And then we just come in there with the brick and mortar.
You see, that's a great question. So this is the interesting thing. One of the worst things that we've created in this world is we've created these walls. We've created these walls where if you're an engineer, then you have to, and it's so bad because it runs so deeply. There are career paths and spaces that we respect more than others. And I think that is so crazy, and that is so sad. I've seen people who are in the financial services space look down on other people that are in this space, or people in the sciences. I can tell you now, having come back, I'm a few days back from the biggest stage in advertising in the world. The greatest theme that there is this year is about how all these different fields can come together and ultimately chart the way towards progress. I loved how we spoke about, people spoke about technology, science, all these things becoming not competitors, but enablers to say, how can we take these ideas, whether it's ideas about human progress, whether it's ideas about how we solve the world's problems, but we break down the walls and we say, how do we work together so that we create an enablement environment using all of these things with creativity at the center? Because I think without that, there is something seriously missing.
Can we give a round of applause?
Thank you.
But from the Lincoln Wiley and the Henley Business School, we'd like to say thank you for the gift.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.